Hi guys, this is 3D Printing 101, the channel you can rely on for 3D printing tips, tricks and tutorials. Today we're going to be using the miniatures you can see on screen to demonstrate how you can use basic slicing techniques to print your models. Since I didn't design these models myself, there's going to be links in the description where you can download them and then follow along with the tutorial. And with that, let's roll the intro and get started. We're starting with the Mecha Brute. Look how friendly he is. If this doesn't make you weep with cuteness, I don't know what will. Since this is a more advanced tutorial, I'm going to be using the advanced settings preset, but if you don't feel comfortable with some of the more complex settings yet, just stick to basics and you should still be able to follow along. So with all that out of the way, let's get to slicing this lovely beast. In my opinion, the first thing you should do when setting up your model is make sure you have a good size. The size of the model dictates and influences how you'll change the rest of your settings, and it's important you decide on the size early on so you don't have to change the settings later. So since we're working on miniatures today, we want something that's about 25 to 28mm tall. This model comes at 25mm by default, so we don't need to change this setting. After this step's out of the way, the next thing to do is just work down the wall of settings. Since what we're printing is going to be quite small, you want a very detailed resolution, so I'd recommend going for something like 0.1mm for your layer height. If we slice this and head to the preview tab, you can see in the layer view that we still retain lots of detail in the final print. Since this design has lots of precise geometry, this layer height is exactly what we want. The next setting on the list is wall thickness. You can think of the wall thickness as the thickness of the perimeter around each layer of your model. You can see here that it's 1.2mm of filament for each layer. Just to be on the safe side, I'd crank this number up to 1.5 because it won't add much print time or filament usage. Now the next setting we're going to cover is something that can make or break your model, infill. You can see that in the preview tab most of the torso is not filled in. In large scale prints, this would be bad as it would mean the structural stability would be very low. Since it's such a small scale, it won't need much inner support, so this should be a good number. However, I'd recommend changing it to the cubic grid pattern for your infill, as this would give you more strength than otherwise. Now we've got infill out the way, the next settings are the material properties, the speed, the travel and cooling. These settings are quite machine or filament specific. I might make a video on this soon. You should go and check your hardware and what filament you're using so you can set these settings correctly. Out of all the settings on the list, support materials probably what needs explaining the most. I've touched on this in the previous video, but I'll go over it again. Support material just simply supports overhangs of your model that wouldn't otherwise be printable. You can see that in Cura, the filament of the hand, which overhangs from the rest of the body, is left in midair. In real life, this filament would simply fall to the ground. It's often something many people forget when preparing the prints. In this scenario, we tick Enable Support Material, and when you've sliced it, you should see that there's a column of plastic which reached up to support the hand. This makes our model printable. Thought that was the end of supports? Well no, this is 3D printing, it has to have a catch. You can see that it's had supports everywhere on the body, including the torso, and areas we really don't need it to be. Fortunately, there's a solution to this time-wasting problem. It comes in the name of support blockers. You can find support blockers by clicking on your model and heading over here. Clicking on your model that will then create a support blocker, like here. Support blockers, well, within their volume, support blockers will stop any support from appearing in your model. We need to increase the size of this blocker to cover the rest of the body. We'll do this now using the scale handles. Oh, also make sure to disable uniform scaling. Now when you reslice your model, you'll see that the support is exactly where we need it to be. Now you might notice that there's some fine-tuned settings for the support material, but I find that the default settings for this model seem to be good, so don't bother changing it. So there you have it. By following this tutorial, you managed to fully configure your first miniature. If you want some more practice on the techniques we've used in this video, I've attached some other miniatures you can use to test yourself. They're slightly harder to figure out than the Mecha Brute, but if you have any problems or you just want to share your work, don't be afraid to do it in the comments section down below. If you enjoyed the video and didn't find it too boring, I'd really appreciate it if you could subscribe to the channel and like the video, so that we can help more and more people begin their 3D printing journeys. And on that note, I'll say goodbye and have a happy new year. Adios.